This conference will now be recorded.
So we're on a whole new, brand new topic this month. I'm very excited. Let's see. I don't think we need to do introductions. I can't see if everybody. No, I think everybody, we all know each other. Okay, report from the countywide liaison. Cheryl?
Countywide met on March 18, and we did goal 5, which is energy sources, and goal 13, which is energy conservation. Pretty smooth, not too controversial. Jim suggested that we just almost over and over use the term renewable resources instead of listing specific resources. So that was just a generic one that we agreed to in the beginning. Goal 5, we passed with, as recommended by staff, some amendments. There were only 4 policies in there that went smoothly. Goal 13 also only had 4 policies, and those were passed, some of them with quite a few amendments. The one on recycling had a lot of amendments, but sort of the overall consensus of everybody is that we need more recycling in Clatsop County. Lots of ways, lots of places. So, and then at the end, we had a discussion about how to deal with table 2. And table 2 is always new policies. And the new policies for energy sources was 3 pages long. So we had some discussion on whether or not we should go through them, whether or not we needed to okay the language, sort of where they went and what happened to them. So that was just a sort of a process question there at the end. And that's it.
Great. Thank you for continuing to go to those countywide meetings, Cheryl. I know that's a big time commitment. Okay, and we don't have meeting summary notes yet from our past meetings?
No, we don't. We've probably sent about 15 sets to the transcriptionists at this point. They have gotten through 2 sets, and they're slowly working their way through. So we're hopeful that next month we'll have some meeting summaries.
Okay, great.
Will the transcriptionists do the countywide meetings first, or are they just going chronologically?
I don't know how they decided. I think they're going chronologically because the first set that came in was a set of October meeting summaries for the Lewis and Clark group, which I think was the oldest one we had outstanding. I just got the December countywide set of minutes in to review, and I'll have to send that back to the transcriptionists this week or next week.
Okay, is there any public comment before we dive into goal 8? Great. Gail, do you want to introduce or say anything about goal 8 before we jump into the tables?
Gail, I have a quick question. And I'm sure you told us this last time, but this will be a review for me. What happened to goal 7? Which is natural disasters and hazards. And I'm sure you already told us, but just remind us.
Yeah, we decided goal 7 really wasn't important, so we're just going to drop it from the plan. No, we skipped goal 7 because the county's been working on this multi-jurisdictional natural hazards mitigation plan, and we wanted to wait until that was adopted so that we could pull those policies out of there and include them in our comprehensive plan update. And so that just happened last month with the Board of Commissioners at their last meeting, and so we'll be bringing goal 7 to you in May. So we're a little bit out of sync, but there was a reason for it.
Perfect. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then Jen, just generally about Goal 8, Ian put together the background information and did a lot of work on this. And so he and I have been kind of jointly working on it. But just a quick summary, and I'll turn it over to Ian in case he wants to add something. But basically, our county Goal 8 consists of the policies and recommendations and action items that are in the 2006 Parks Master Plan that Clatsop County did 15 years ago. So like we're going to be doing with the hazard mitigation plan, we basically took another adopted plan that was completed, pulled their policies and recommendations, and used it as part of our comprehensive plan. So this is actually one of the more up-to-date goals in our comp plan because it only dates back to 2006 and not to 1980. We did meet with the Planning Commission and discuss these goals, and then Ian also led a discussion with the Recreational Lands Planning Advisory Committee to go over basically what are their goals and policies and see what they thought about them. And we did that on February 25th. And so I'll let Ian talk a little bit about how that meeting went and if he has anything he wants to add to our summary of Goal 8 that you should know.
Sure. So the Recreational Lands Planning Advisory Committee was great. They came to the meeting super prepared, having gone through everything. It seemed very thoroughly and had some really great recommendations. So those are summarized in the tables, as Gail mentioned. I would say the biggest takeaway that I had from that group was that they are pining to update the Parks Master Plan here very soon. So, you know, all of the recommendations they gave were kind of given with the caveat that all these things are going to be looked at much more closely soon when they go through that master plan update process. And then personally, I just feel in Clatsop County, and we probably are all aware of this, that one of the important issues to think about for the next 20 years is how our ever-growing tourism industry plays into Goal 8 and how to account for that and the strain that that industry can put on the resources, also the benefits that we can get from that industry using those resources, and then also thinking about the balance between the tourism industry and the needs of local residents. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Cool. Yeah, I just thought it was so valuable to have had the recommendations from the Lands Planning Committee also, as they know a lot about this stuff, and it's nice to be able to look at everybody's input when thinking about these policies. So I'm looking now at table 1. In the PDF, it's on page 10, if y'all are following along. And I mean, in general, I like totally support the parks. They're one of the things I use the most in the county. My family goes hiking at one of the county parks probably once a week or so. So I'm super supportive of recreational lands. And all of these policies are, I mean, we can go by, if anybody has any that they want to talk about, but I felt like they're all pretty protective of existing recreational lands, and the recommendations put forth by the staff and the Planning Commission seemed really positive to me. Is there anybody who has any in particular that they want to discuss? Yeah, Tally?
Yeah, I definitely liked all of the policies. There were definitely some where I felt like that's a great idea that's not happening, like having bathrooms in the parks, or even just like Big Creek doesn't even have a trash can or that kind of service. I think that's on purpose because they don't want to encourage people to leave trash there, but they do still, and I end up picking it up a lot. So I don't know, what the follow through is, I guess, on this. Like, we can have a policy that we, encourage maintenance or doing these things, but then, like, if it doesn't actually happen, I don't know how useful it is.
Mhm. Yeah, Cheryl.
Kelly, I think that that's an ongoing concern. The boat ramp at Aldrich Point is now under the control of the county, and there's always the concern. There's no outhouse there, there's no trash there, but I know that it's a staffing concern, and staffing concern is always a funding concern. And so maybe we as citizens and land use planning folks just need to advocate for a bigger budget for the Parks and Rec. But as with all budgets, if you put it in one place, then you take it out of another. So, not adequate funding to maintain those parks is a huge challenge.
Right, and I don't think that the budget, the comprehensive plan doesn't have any say over the budget. So I think, the best we can do is put forth in the policies what the desires are, and then the people who are doing the budget, use this to guide them. That's my understanding, at least.
Ian, I had one miscellaneous question for you. I did not see Camp Kawanalong on any of the lists.
Right. They are a private organization, so I'm not sure how they would tie into our land use policies and our comprehensive plan. So did you have a thought about that, Cheryl?
No, I had forgotten, or it wasn't aware of the fact that it was private. I just didn't, it gets used a lot, and it's a wonderful resource, and I just didn't see it in the list.
Yeah, they have been leasing land from the county for a long time, and I think we just recently completed a transfer of the property to
Okay.
Camp Kawanalong.
It is highlighted on that map on page 6 in the PDF as a county recreation land site. But I don't know.
Yeah, it did show up on the
Yeah.
Yeah, and that map dates back to 2010, so it's a little bit out of
okay.
date now. Yeah, and it was only, I believe, a few months ago where we did the property transfer.
Got it.
I would add too that normally in parks master plans, I think, all recreation providers, whether they're various public agencies or private providers, are kind of accounted for to determine what is available to county residents, so that they can, identify gaps in the planning process and find out, for example, what if the county is doing their master plan, and they're looking at what providers are out there and what resources are out there, then they can make sure that they're not duplicating any services. So I think probably that's why it is included in the map, is just to account for it as something that's out there available to residents.
Jen, are we just looking at the policies right now, policy 1 through 12, or are we also looking at the objectives and the action things?
I think we can look at any of them. I personally don't have any changes, and would accept the recommendations of the staff and the planning commission. I don't know if anybody has anything they would, any any policies where they don't want to take the recommendations?
I was fine with all of them, and as I'm re-looking at it, objective 2 deals with funding and operation policies. And so there are some things in there, you know, that deal with funding, but again, budget is not ours. But objective 2, one is to make the parks increasingly self-sustaining, including developing partnerships where possible. And that seems like a great goal.
Mm-hmm. So should we vote to accept all the recommendations? Great. That's a yes from everyone. Awesome. 4 thumbs up. And then we have table 2, our Northeast Community Plan.
And I have a question either for Ian or for Gail. The boat ramp at Aldridge Point, is that public or private? And I'm sorry that Dirk's not here because I know he worked on that as a county commissioner for a while, and it was one and then it was the other. So if you can just clarify what it is now.
Okay, I believe that it's public. I was out there, it's been maybe about 6 months now, but every time I've been out there, it's been public, and we actually used it when ODF and W took us out to the float houses to do an inspection with DSL, and I believe it's a public boat ramp at this point.
Yeah, I'm a little confused because in table 12 of the Parks Master Plan, it says the ownership is private. And I don't know who that would be, but it says Clatsop County maintains it. And I do think it is available for public access, even if it's owned by some private party. So that's a good question.
And while we're working on that, the list on table 11, yeah, Aldridge Point, yeah, could be clarified on that table 11 or table 2 actually, I guess. No, table 11. I can't read my own notes anymore. Table 11.
Table 11. You're talking about all these inventories at the very end of the PDF, Cheryl? I see a table 11 on page 49, public water access, rivers and streams. It's like part of the master plan.
Good, yeah, I just got back to my table 11 too, yeah. So Aldridge Point is not even listed on that table 11. And there is access to the water there, both for boats, because there's a boat ramp that the county now maintains. And then there's a little bitty sandy beach there that's very nice for picnics and swimming. So if that just could get added for public water access.
Okay, and to answer your question, Cheryl, I still believe it's public, but it's not under the ownership of Clatsop County. There's none of it is property owned by the county.
Yeah, it is a great little beach. Yeah, it's listed on table 12, public water access, boat ramps, public water access, rivers and streams. So it's listed as a boat ramp, but not as a river and stream. for what that's worth. And it says it's private ownership but maintained by Clatsop County.
Yeah, and I think that's correct. I think that's exactly how it is now.
Cool.
Yeah, so if it can just get added to table 11 for public access.
Okay. Going back to table 2, then our Northeast Community Plan. Again, I was good with all the staff recommendations on these. There are, like, the first one is kind of funky, saying that, I mean, yeah, the way that it was worded before is funny, but the staff recommendation looked good. I don't know why those two in particular were called out of all of the Northeast areas that we have. I'm not sure that it's necessary to keep that policy. Does anybody have thoughts on this? It seems like the general plan just already says that, you know, that the properties are available to serve residents' needs. Gail or Ian, is there a reason to keep this policy?
I can see why we could remove it. I also can see why maybe revising it just to reiterate and reemphasize what this whole goal is about and what we're trying to accomplish with our recreational needs. So leaving it in would help reinforce that idea. I'm personally comfortable with either way the board or the committee wants to go.
I agree with Gail. I think that makes sense to sort of reinforce what it says. It is a bit redundant, but I'm okay to leave it in with the staff recommendation for revising it.
Okay.
You know, and it's what Tally brought up before, that again, because there isn't staff to maintain the parks, then we as neighbors and citizens end up picking up the trash. I know, you know, whenever we go to Aldridge Point, we always take extra garbage bags knowing that we're going to haul stuff out. And a friend of mine owns property that backs right onto it. And the fact that there's no bathroom facilities there is, you know, an ongoing concern.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, I'm good with all the others with the staff recommendations.
I'm just curious a little bit about policy 3, the one about trespassing. Has that been an issue that the counties had to deal with, like people going onto private property, from a park, moving into private property and causing issues? Is there a reason for signage?
I think in general, it's probably a good idea. In my time here in the past 3.5 years, I'm not aware of it being a significant issue, although parks may be getting all those complaints and we're not seeing them. And it may have been a bigger issue 40 years ago. But I think it's always good to remind people that there is a difference between public and private. And I think even in cities, you see it or anywhere where people see a vacant piece of land and they assume it's a park, and you know, sometimes it gets developed and sometimes it's private property, and it's always good to remind people to be respectful, I think.
Cool. All right, so we're good on table 2 then. No changes necessary. Go with staff recommendations. And then table 3, new issues and policies. With the first one, population changes and climate migration, my sense is that we're to expect more people moving here over the coming years. That's what everybody else understands too?
Yeah, and I think as part of that, what we may see happen is that we have people coming from more urbanized areas who may be used to a different level of amenities in their parks and may have different expectations for what they want to use a park for or how they use it. So those would be things to look at, or different cultures or different age ranges may have different needs for parks as well.
Yeah, so that need for bathrooms at Aldrich Point might become more urgent. Does anybody have any ideas about a policy to address this?
This doesn't address it directly, but just to mention while we're in the generic, parks and recreation, is that Clatsop County has more Oregon Department of Forestry land acres than any other county in the entire state, and yet we have fewer campground recreation facilities within that state forestry. Tillamook has fewer acres in forestry, and yet they have more recreational opportunities. So that's, I mean, Nat Creek is sort of the only one in our neighborhood, and Nat Creek is small and pitiful. It's very dark. You have to like camping in the dark, and there's just a handful of sites there, and they're primitive, which is fine, but it's not an ideal destination.
So you'd like to see more camping facilities in Clatsop County?
Yes, and not necessarily on county land, but again, if State Department of Forestry could open up some areas in the forestry that would serve Clatsop County without the county having to take on the responsibility for maintaining it.
Okay. So going back for a moment to the population changes demographics, the Clatsop Plains Committee that meets right before you, they came up with a policy that said Clatsop County shall utilize population and demographic, projections to determine how changes will affect recreational needs and amenities. Kind of general, but at least reminds us that we need to think about the changes that are coming up.
One thing I would add too is that I believe this is included in Goal 8 in the OARs, is that when you're updating the Parks Master Plan, you refer to the State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, or SCORP. And the SCORP is regularly updated and includes those demographic metrics and future trends and things like that. When I was working on parks planning for the city of Astoria, I referred heavily to the SCORP, and it was super useful for those kinds of things as far as demographic trends, and then recreational needs associated with shifts in those trends. One that stands out in my memory was for the Latinx community, providing picnic shelter facilities in parks was a really valuable amenity for family gatherings and celebrations and things like that. So the SCORP is a really useful document if you want some further recreation reading.
Thanks.
Yeah, and that kind of is the segue onto, I don't know if it necessarily fits under this exact one. I was going to bring it up later, but since you brought up like needs of Latinx community, is just that somehow acknowledging that parks and parklands have not been historically welcoming to diverse, populations, and that, I mean, in Nadia's notes after this, she kind of talks about it as well, but just remembering to engage and speak to and listen to other communities that would like to use the park's facilities too, I don't know how to write that into a policy, but like just acknowledging that there are things that make the existing park structure potentially not welcoming.
Yeah, like signage could be bilingual. Would be a nice place to start.
Yeah, and then obviously in any planning process, you want to do as much community engagement as possible. So I can't remember what was listed in the policies in the current master plan, but definitely in the update, doing as much community engagement as possible to inform that plan would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a good time to bring it up, but like another thing I've thought about with the parks is it would be helpful to know like what is and isn't okay in terms of like how to use them. Like, can you throw a big event there? Like, if you wanted to do that, can you bring in your own porta potties? Like, if so, is like, are there like set fees for different types of events? Like, I've tried to find that information and it hasn't been clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
There are just, so everyone knows, there are forms, I think, on the parks website, on the county parks website, to reserve a park and schedule an event and those kinds of things. But I know one of the things that the Recreational Lands Planning Advisory Committee was discussing during that meeting back in February was to post better information, to make information more readily available at parks so people can access that while they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I put down as possible draft language to address the park outdoor etiquette and what you can and can't do in a park. Clatsop County shall establish an educational program to inform park users about safety and proper ways to interact with nature in order to preserve it. The county shall also post information about the permitted activities within parks. Does that capture what you were looking for?
Mm-hmm. That sounds great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also think it's cool when parks like have, throughout like a walking trail, like, different wildlife to, have information about, to like teach people about what they're seeing in terms of the like plants.
Mm-hmm. Or like the history of the area, whatever. I'm also always in favor of those kinds of placards at parks.
Okay, so for that one, I put down that the county shall install interpretive signage at its facilities as appropriate. Did we want to elaborate more on that, or?
Sounds like a good. There's the smoke and wildfires is also up there, and I'm not sure what to say about that, but I agree that it should be considered in thinking about recreational plans.
Are there ways in which we should be, you know, thinking about managing the parks so that we, you know, are not encouraging wildfire to explode? I don't know. There's things that we should be doing or could be doing more of, or like could like educate people that have, you know, are adjacent to parklands about like, you know, clearing off their flammable brush.
Okay, so I put down a policy that says the county shall utilize best management practices related to wildfire prevention and reduction. And then also that the county should work to educate visitors and residents about wildfire risks in park areas and promote safety measures and appropriate behavior to prevent wildfires.
This is an area too where I don't know how much, if you guys collaborate with the local fire districts or not, but I'm sure that they would have more ideas about this if they haven't already been consulted. You know, when you see those like the fire risk charts at different camping areas or like recreational areas, is that something that the county is in control of, or do fire districts manage those signs or put them up, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think those are done by the fire district. And if you're talking like at the they have like your fire
Like
risk today with Smoking the Bear. Yeah,
totally.
I think, yeah, I don't know who does that, but I know it's not the county. And I think it's the parks that have put them out, or the fire districts.
Like if there's a burn ban, those are often by county, right? Like this last September, it would be like Clatsop, or, you know, like different. It seemed like it was by county whether you were allowed to have a.
Yeah, the burn bans actually are through Department of Environmental Quality. And so they will put out the burn bans notices. So it's not, again, the county really doesn't have a big role in fire prevention, other than reacting to it after it happens. So.
Okay. Are there?
Do we have a? Oh, sorry.
No, I was just curious if there was a plan in place, like if there is a big wildfire here, like if there's a reaction plan. Oh.
Is that in the natural hazard mitigation plan update?
Yeah, so the mitigation plan update does touch on that, but it doesn't give you the full detail that you would want in a sort of recovery and during the event type of procedure. A lot of that's going to be done through the fire districts or the Department of Forestry. And so, but they are involved. The county has put together some recommendations about things that we can do, and I don't remember what they are off the top of my head. So,
Cool.
but we will look at those next month.
Great. Okay. Are there any other new issues that anybody wants to bring forward for recreational needs?
I like the suggestion that the county potentially use practices in maintaining the parks that would like minimize pesticide use and herbicide, especially since a lot of these parks are near waterways to protect them. Just kind of if when they are maintaining the parks that there's care done to ensure like water, runoff and quality, and also risk to people using the parks and whatnot.
I agree with Kelly, and she mentioned runoff into streams and waterways, and then obviously also a major user of parks is families and children, little ones. So wholeheartedly support reducing herbicide and pesticide use. Gail, you've done this before. You're good at taking our loose ideas and writing them in so that they're coherent. Thank you.
You're welcome. You pretty much get them out there. It's just a matter of can I type as quickly as you can speak.
Any other new issues or policy ideas? Cool, you guys. I think that's it then, unless there's any public comment at this point. Cool.
I thought the process this time was interesting, that it had gone to the county commissioners before it came to us, and then it went to this committee that had a very specific use. So obviously this was clean and clear and nice to work with. Too bad we don't have an entire committee on each of the goals.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, hopefully next month will be not as complex as some of our other goals, because we do have a recently adopted list of policies and things to work on. So will only be less than 2 months old at that point. So hopefully that should be pretty straightforward.
Great. Well, shall we call it a day then, folks?
Okay. Sounds good. It's a good afternoon to be out.
Yeah, go get some sunshine. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.